My fiancé said at the venue, "I want a destination wedding in Bora Bora. Tell your grandparents they can't come. They're too old to travel." My grandparents raised me. I said, "Let me think about it." Then I canceled the venue, threw a small ceremony with my grandparents officiating, and married someone else 6 months later. When she got the wedding announcement, I'm 29, male, work in logistics, own a modest house, generally keep my head down and fix problems instead of talking them to death. People who know me would describe me as steady. That's always been the goal. My grandparents raised me from age 7. My mom left for reasons she never fully explained, and my dad died 18 months later in a car accident on I-40. So it was just the 3 of us in a 2-bedroom house in rural Tennessee, vegetable garden out back, which stove my grandfather maintained like it was a member of the family. They didn't have a lot. They gave me everything they had. My grandmother taught me how to cook, how to listen, how to actually hear what someone wasn't saying. My grandfather taught me what it means to show up. Every game, every graduation, every bad decision I made that needed a conversation instead of a punishment, they were there. So when I got engaged at 28, having my grandparents at my wedding wasn't a preference. It was the whole point of having a wedding. My fiancée and I had been together 3 years. She was sharp, driven, the kind of woman who made a room pay attention. I was drawn to that. I also, in hindsight, confused confidence of character. That's a mistake I've now paid for in full. Her vision for the wedding expanded roughly every 90 days. Started as something elegant, grew into a full production. I went along with most of it because I kept telling myself the wedding was one day, the marriage was everything after. We had a venue booked, a restored barn about 40 minutes outside Nashville, creek running behind it, string lights in every rafter, capacity for 120 people. Deposit was $4,200. Paid from my account, contract in my name. Date was set for the following June. We were 6 weeks out from mailing invitations. Then we went to the venue one Tuesday afternoon for a final walkthrough with the coordinator. She stepped out to take a phone call. My fiancé and I were standing in the main hall looking at where the tables would go, and she turned to me with a specific expression I'd seen before, the one that meant she'd already made a decision and was now informing me of it. "I've been thinking," she said. "I want to do Bora Bora." I looked at her. "We have a signed contract and a deposit down. Deposits can be handled. I'm talking about what I actually want. Overwater bungalows, a week-long experience, the whole thing." She said it the way people describe something they've already bought. I reminded her that we'd talked about destination weddings early on, and agreed they weren't practical for our families. "Your family is 3 people," she said. "My family can travel. It's your grandparents I'm talking about. They're in their 80s. A 20-hour trip with layovers isn't realistic for them, and you know that. So just tell them they can't come. They'll understand. They're old, not stupid." The coordinator walked back in smiling. We spent the next 4 to 5 minutes discussing table arrangements. I answered questions when I was asked. I smiled when it made sense. And the whole time, something was shifting in my chest that I didn't have a word for yet. I didn't blow up in the car. That's not how I operate. I said, "Let me think about it" on the drive home, and she took that as forward momentum, which told me something important about how she'd been interpreting me for 3 years. That night after she fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and thought about my grandfather's face at my high school graduation. Hands folded in his lap, rough and worn, but his face completely lit up. I thought about my grandmother holding my face in her hands before I left for college, saying, "You come back to us." I thought about every time those 2 people chose me when they didn't have to. Then I thought about my fiancé's face when she said, "Tell them they can't come." No hesitation, no apology, no acknowledgement that she was asking me to erase the 2 people who built me. She didn't ask. She informed. I called my grandfather the next morning while she was at work. Didn't tell him what happened. Just talked like I used to when I was a teenager working something out. Near the end of the call, he said, "You sound like you're carrying something, son." I told him I was fine. He said, "All right, I'm here." That was the moment I knew what I was going to do. I just needed 3 more days to be sure I wasn't being reactive. I wasn't. On day 4, I called the venue coordinator. The contract had a cancellation clause. Cancel more than 90 days before the event. Deposit is forfeited but no further charges apply. We were at 94 days out. I lost $4,200. I thought of it as tuition on a very important lesson. Then I told my fiancée at dinner that night. Both hands on the table. Calm voice. I canceled the venue. I'm not going to marry someone who wants me to exclude my grandparents from my wedding, so I'm not going to marry you. She stared at me. Then she laughed. That short, disbelieving sound people make when they are certain you're joking. You canceled a $4,200 deposit, she said. I did. Over this. Over who you showed me you are. Yeah. The laugh stopped. What followed was a 2-week campaign that I can only describe as a full-court press. First came her mother, calling to explain that her daughter was under enormous stress and that I was being inflexible. Pleasant woman, completely ineffective argument. Then came the social maneuvering. Within 4 days, 2 separate mutual friends mentioned to me that they'd heard I was having cold feet and had freaked out over wedding logistics. She was managing the story while I was still just sitting with what I knew to be true. Then she showed up at my front door with a printed itinerary, a Bora Bora compromise. She called it. My grandparents would watch the ceremony via live stream from Tennessee. High definition. She'd had this printed and organized with a cover page. A live stream, I said. They'd see everything in real time. It's actually more comfortable for them than traveling. I handed the papers back to her. No. Her expression shifted. The negotiating version of her face dropped, and what was underneath was harder. You're going to lose me over 2 people who are going to be gone in 10 years anyway. I opened the door wider. Then you're already gone. Safe drive home. She left. Over the next 3 hours, she sent 12 texts. They ranged from apologetic to accusatory to, at text 11, a warning that she would tell people I had been emotionally unavailable throughout the relationship if I didn't reconsider. Text 12 was a voice memo of her crying. I didn't respond to any of them. I saved all of them. I returned her belongings in 2 labeled boxes, left on her mother's porch. She had a key to my house. I changed the locks, not dramatically, just practically. That chapter was done. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the story doesn't end there. About 6 weeks after the breakup, I called my grandmother and told her I wanted to do something small, a real ceremony. The 3 of us plus some close friends. Where? She asked. Your backyard, I said. She was quiet for a second. I'll make the potato salad. The woman I ended up marrying, I'd known her for about 2 years as a friend of a colleague. We ran in the same general social circle, had coffee twice in group settings, nothing notable. 6 weeks after my engagement ended, I ran into her at a hardware store. She was buying weather stripping. I was buying a new deadbolt. We talked in the parking lot for 40 minutes. 3 months of actual dating followed. The deliberate kind, where you're paying attention to whether someone is who they appear to be. She was honest in ways that were sometimes uncomfortable. She'd tell me when she disagreed without softening it into nothing. She made fun of herself easily. When I told her about my grandparents raising me, she didn't say that's so sweet. She asked what my grandfather was like. She asked what my grandmother cooked. Actual questions. When I told her I wanted my grandfather to officiate, she pulled out her phone on the spot. Does he need an ordination certificate? I can look that up right now. He did. Tennessee requires officiants to be ordained ministers or have legal authorization. We got him a legitimate online ordination, valid in Tennessee, and he practiced the ceremony on the back porch 3 times before the wedding day. 17 people in my grandparents' backyard on a Saturday in October. Folding chairs. String lights borrowed from a neighbor. My grandmother's potato salad, which she had apparently been quietly perfecting in her head for months. My grandfather stood under the oak tree in the suit he wore to my father's funeral 22 years earlier, and he married us with a steadiness that made several people cry. I was one of them. It was the best day of my life. No coordinator, no itinerary, no live stream compromise. Just the right people in the right place. My ex moved on publicly and loudly, posted about healing, growth, new chapters. She started dating someone new, a guy who worked in commercial real estate. Within about 2 months of our breakup, I wasn't tracking her closely, but mutual friends keep you informed whether you ask or not. Then, About 8 weeks after my wedding, a certified letter showed up at my house. My ex-fiancée, through an attorney, was claiming I owed her half the value of the canceled venue deposit, $2,100, on the grounds that we had made the booking jointly and I had canceled it without her consent. I want to be precise about why this was legally nonsense. The deposit was paid entirely from my personal account. The contract was signed solely in my name, and Tennessee has no common law property provisions that would give an unmarried partner claim over a unilateral contract I entered into and paid for independently. Any attorney worth anything would have told her this up front. She hired one anyway. The goal wasn't to win. The goal was to make me tired enough to write a check and disappear. I called a contract attorney I knew through work. 4 to 5 minute consultation, flat fee. He read the letter, put it down, and said, "This is a pressure tactic. She has no viable claim. Do you want to respond formally or let it sit?" I said respond. We sent a formal response through his office. It laid out, with actual legal citations, that the contract was solely in my name, that no co-payment had been made by her, and that any further correspondence would go through counsel. It also noted, this was my attorney's addition, which I approved, that we had documentation of communications from my ex that included a recorded threat to damage my reputation if I didn't comply with her demands, and that we were prepared to explore whether that rose to actionable harassment under Tennessee law. That letter went out on a Tuesday. Her attorney sent a withdrawal notice by Thursday. Done. $300 in legal fees, and the whole thing evaporated. But the thing I didn't engineer, the part one just let happen, came next. Her new boyfriend worked in commercial real estate and moved in some of the same professional circles as people I knew well. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't have to. The voice memo she'd sent me, the one where she threatened my reputation, had been heard by my attorney during the consultation. Information about character moves through professional networks on its own timeline, and I had done nothing to stop it and nothing to push it. I don't know the exact moment her boyfriend's understanding of her shifted. I know that they broke up about 4 months after my wedding. A mutual friend told me over lunch, completely unprompted. And here's the part that closed the loop for me. When my wedding announcement went out, a simple card, photo of all 17 of us under the oak tree, my grandfather in that suit. My ex-fiancée received one. She had been on the address list we'd built together when we were engaged. I never removed her. I'm honestly not certain whether I forgot or whether some part of me didn't want to. She didn't respond to the card. She didn't have to. A mutual friend told me she went quiet on social media for about 2 weeks after she received it. I'm good with that. My grandparents are 84 and 81. My grandfather still works the garden. My grandmother has a framed photo from the wedding on her mantle, all 17 of us under the oak tree, her potato salad already mostly gone on the table in the background. The right people were in every single frame. That was always the whole point.